we go. Okay, for this Sunday live, I'm doing something a little different. Unfortunately, in lives, you can't do, PowerPoint presentations. You can't put up slides and things like that, and that's a downfall to the lives. But I have been preparing this video for almost 2 years of, of going and visiting schools and trying to figure this all out for myself. And yeah, it's just time. And there's still some things that I don't know, but recently there's been so many people coming and calling and asking us about what education is like in El Salvador that yeah, it's time to get it done. So I'm going to tell you guys what I have found out and some of the connections and the experience that I have had in El Salvador over the last 3 years in meeting with various schools and lots of different people about what the educational options are down here. So here we go. Hang on to your hat because, yeah, there's a reason why there's no other videos on YouTube about about the school and educational options in El Salvador, because it is deep and wide. There, you have more choices than Trump has, possible candidates for his cabinet. It's a little crazy. So here we go. Okay. Check out my slide. Do you like it? Okay, first of all, who am I? I am Jenny Adi. I am the concierge host with Living Like a Local. We are an immigration and hosting company in El Salvador, one of the first ones to start about 3 years ago, because before then, all the immigration companies were to go out of El Salvador. We help people who are thinking about coming to El Salvador move to El Salvador through our relocation tours and also through our immigration help and through our medical aid too. So if you are thinking about coming to El Salvador, we're your one-stop shop to make that transition as smooth as it can be. Okay, so here is my slide. The educational options. First, I'm going to start up here with these guys because these two are the only two options. Let me change that over here. These two are the only two options that do not require a uniform. All of these options do require a uniform. So first, homeschooling online. If you're coming to El Salvador, yes, you can obviously nowadays with the internet, you can homeschool or do an online school from your country of origin that you came from, or maybe you're just doing your own thing and you're world schooling, or you already have your own curriculums and you're going to bring that with you. If you are, there isn't any official homeschool co-ops that I know of. I am prepping and going to do a homeschooling video here and put it in this playlist with a panel of homeschoolers that I personally know that are currently homeschooling from various countries. There is a get-together that is in Escuela Libre. It's in El Zonte once a week. It's called Escuela Libre. They have a get-together of homeschoolers that come in there, but it is very much, it's not like a co-op where they hold classes, structured classes every week. It is very much, like it says, it's free school. So it is very much on the unschooling side of the spectrum. If we say education is this great big wide spectrum, right, where this side is like complete unschooling and very hands off, and this side and the other side is, say, super structured school, like sit down, heavy curriculum, kind of the drilling and what you'd say is very traditional, super structured school is on this side. There is lots of options within the spectrum. Now, Escuela Libre is definitely on this side since it is on the unschooling side. But they do have some get-togethers. I have a few friends that offer some classes online for homeschoolers. I know in San Blas, they have some homeschooling get-togethers on the beach because there's a lot of international families in the San Blas area. Other than that, we're going to move on down. to the next one, which is alternative schooling. Bloop, right here. Now, alternative schooling, see, and I kind of mentioned the Escuela Libre. There is a Waldorf school up in Escalon that it was going for a while, but I think during the pandemic they stopped, or it was kind of frozen or gone for a little while. But recently, in the past like year and a half, they have started back up again. So there is a Waldorf school available in Escalon. There's also the other two up here there is Acton Academy, and I already have the video and the interview that I did with Shannon, who is the kind of the founder of the Acton Academy here in El Salvador. So you look further down in the playlist if you want to see what Acton is all about. Acton it's international. It's there's Actons all over the globe. And the thing with Acton, you really have to study the pedagogy, because Acton is more like one of those I don't know if you call them like a free school, like if you've seen in Austin, Texas, they have these schools where you have the curriculum, the academic part is only a small portion of the day, and then a lot of the rest of the day is like life skills. They don't do grades. In Acton, they have Quest. So in other words, it's very interactive. It's very student directed, student motivated. The kids go on these quests. Now they do have to show mastery at certain levels in order to move up to the next level, but they're not going to be like sitting down, taking a test and getting a grade. I love Acton. I think it's a great way if you like the concept of homeschooling and having student directed learning, but let's get real, being mom and being teacher and being that it's not your forte. But you don't want to go the whole other side of the spectrum to the superstructure. I find Acton it's a really good leaning towards the unschooling, homeschooling side. And they are expanding. They're expanding, and they're going to be one of the first schools that is down on the beach. They're expanding into Zonte. And I believe they're going to have options. So if you're a homeschooler and you want your child to do certain courses in a school type setting, I think they're going to have those options. But they're expanding, so they have lots of openings. It's a really great interactive school. Check out my video and you'll see more about that. They do require you, when you are submitting, you do need to read the book about their pedagogy, so you understand how your child is going to be learning in their school setting. Next is the Arbol de Vida, the one right here. Arbol de Vida again is similar to Acton, but a little different. And you can go to their website. I think it's arboldevidasv.com. Now, on Arbol de Vida, they don't like stress the academics a lot. So, but what they do have is if you have a learner that kind of has a little bit of different programming or doesn't do well in the superstructure type schools, they're a really good option for that. I have friends that have tried Arbol de Vida because their kids didn't really flourish in the whole, sit in a desk, most of the day type environment. So, but I have to say Arbol de Vida they're pretty full, and they are looking to expand. They're looking to maybe get they're not sure if they're going to get a new campus. I just talked with Rodrigo like last week, and he said, I'm not sure if we need something bigger because we've maxed out our current campus and some other grade levels are full, but there are always kids going. So you can check in with them if that's one of the options that you're possibly looking at. Okay, now to the schools where the kids have to use uniforms, which is everywhere else. And let's start with what education in El Salvador, what it's called, what it looks like. And in a Salvadoran school, their school year actually starts in February and then it goes to the beginning of November. That is the first very important thing to know about Salvadoran schools. And to be kind of qualified with MINED, okay, you have to meet certain requirements, certain levels. These schools here, these alternative schools and the homeschool online schools, those are obviously not, they are not qualified or certified with MINED. So in other words, and you're like, oh, well, what does that matter? Well, that matters when it comes to applying for a university in El Salvador. If you have graduated from a school that is not certified by MINED. So, but some people, I mean, I know lots of people that start their children out in, say, an alternative school, and then come high school time, they'll switch them over into a private school or an international school so that they do graduate from a school that is certified, depending upon where they want their kids to go. So that's the first thing you need to know. Second thing you need to know is, okay, the levels of schools and how, let me turn it back here. The levels of school and how it works in El Salvador. So this is, and these names, these are kind of general names. Typically, it's not necessarily all the 3-year-olds are called this. I mean, certain schools will call maybe K4, you know, just like in the States. They'll call it, oh, Kinder 4 or Kinder 5. But generally speaking, this is a lot of the terminology that they use. They have maternal. Maternal is, it's like, you know, it's the babies. It's like just when you get them potty trained, like that's when they can start going into maternal kind of classes. Then they have pre-kinder, then they have kinder, and then they have preparatorio, or they just call it prepa. And prepa is right before you are starting or you're going into primaria. This is primaria, which is first, second, third, fourth, fifth. That's primaria school. Then they have sixth, seventh, and eighth right here. That's called secundaria. Now, in the public school that, public school wise, that's about as far as it goes. The public school that I volunteered in for about a year, they had it, they went up to 8th grade, but in ninth grade, about half of the kids had dropped out of school, and they were going and doing other things because the 9th grade class was like half the size of the 8th grade classes, which I guess is kind of typical. And the other thing when it comes to public schools is in El Salvador, the public schools, they don't like, high school is called, let me put it here. High school is called bachillerato, okay? That's what they call high school, but it is not included in the public school system. You have to pay to go to get your bachelor, to go to high school in El Salvador. And their high schools they're kind of technical focused. A little bit like a mix between a trade school and a high school. So they'll have like a medical bachillerato, or they'll have like a technical or a STEM kind of high school that kind of focuses on those kind of careers. And you've got to pay for that. It's not a lot, but that's how the high schools are structured. After they graduate with their bachillerato, then they can go to university. And the universities in El Salvador are typically, they're about 5 years. It's a 5-year degree. And some of the typical ones, they have University of El Salvador, they have University Católica, the UCA, and they have like Essen is one of their biggest technical, technical high-tech type universities. So that's kind of the lay of the land when it comes to public and private. The only other thing I'm going to say about public schools is in my volunteering at my public school in my canton, the public schools will vary greatly if it's a in-town public school or if it's out in the country kind of public school. For example, my husband went into an in-town public school, and it was known as being um, a really good public school. Uh, and he went for a good, like, I think it was like 1 to 5 o'clock every day. So it's about 4 hours, or maybe it's 5:30, like 4.5 hours of public school every day. And then, but in my canton, where I volunteered at, the kids went in. Well, it depended. It depended because the morning they had the morning kids come in at like 7, and then they left by like 11:30. So it's about 4 hours again. But they had to leave for a certain time. They had to kind of shorten the periods in the afternoon just because the buses stopped running. And so they had to let out so the kids could catch the buses and get home, because then they'd start the second round would start around like 1 o'clock. They'd start at 1 o'clock, and then they'd go to 3:34. And if the last bus came by at 4, we had to let out before then. So, and then typically in public school they'd have like PE, and then they'd have for like 30 minutes, and then they'd have a recess for 30 minutes. So even though they're in school for about 4 hours, they're going to have about an hour of active time in those 4 hours. They use primarily workbooks. I didn't really see any actual like books that they were reading from, and that's similar to the United States nowadays. The United States nowadays, they typically, I asked my daughter, who is in a U.S. public high school now, I said, so what books are you reading this semester? She's like, we don't read books, Mom. We read excerpts. So that's kind of similar in El Salvador. The teachers are amazing. The public school teachers are amazing. They work so hard and they give so much to their kids, and they are not paid very much at all. But they love their kids so much, and they're super dedicated to those kids. And our public school, the kids did have computers, and they did have tablets for the little kids. That was something that President Bukele put out. At the time that I was there, they didn't have internet, so the computers didn't do a whole lot. But then the president got Starlink in, and I think his plan was to put internet into all the schools, and I hope that has happened. I haven't checked in with my old school recently, but I mean, if that is an option, I think that could massively help the public school system. Let's see. So that's it for public school system. Next on the list, okay, outside of the public school system, next we have these are kind of private, they're private Salvadoran schools. Okay, Colegio Augusto Walter, these are like old Externado San Jose, Liceo Salvadoreño. These are old, kind of known as being really good private Salvadoran schools. Some of them are published as being bilingual, which kind of borders on the bicultural, but a lot of them are strictly Spanish. So since my channel and this is all about this is directed to people that are thinking about moving to El Salvador. I'm not going to spend a lot of time or tell you a lot of details about those schools. I'm going to skip on down to what is the bicultural versus the international. The bicultural versus international. Now, these two types of schools, first of all, you have an application process that you have to go to get into these schools. And the big difference is a bicultural school will have sometimes they'll have a split, like it says, between the two cultures, but it may still have a Salvadoran schedule versus a northern schedule. Whereas an international school, almost 100% has a northern schedule, means it starts in August and goes to June, and they have like the summertime off. versus some of the bicultural schools. That's not the case. They'll still have a Salvadoran schedule where they'll start in February and then go to the beginning of November. When you apply to these schools, there is an application process. So here's my little breakdown of the application process. First, of course, you have to just do your general information form. Then you typically have to have a proof of parentage, like birth certificates, things like that, that prove that you can enroll them into that school. You need past academic records that are translated and apostolized, and they even have to be, sometimes they have to be stamped by MNED, depending upon the school you're applying to. And that's a whole nother thing that we work through with our clients when they're bringing down here, because there's a lot of paperwork you have to bring from your home country with you. And if you don't do it beforehand because you know what's up and you're working with somebody like us, then you might have to do flights back in order to get more of that paperwork. It's one of the reasons why I started Living Like a Local with my husband, was because I had to do a flight back because I didn't have one of the right papers, and literally I had to go and get it myself. I couldn't have anybody else go and get it. And I was like, oh, if I only knew, all the bureaucracy and all this process before I came down here. And so that's how we were born, you could say. Next is sometimes we'll have pedagogy or reading kind of training. Like, as I said, with Acton, you have to kind of read the book about what they are based on so you understand how your child is learning. And then they will give psychological, English, and Spanish and math tests to see where your kid is at and at what levels he's at, to see where he's behind. He might need to catch up a little bit, or where he might need some extra support in order to be with around the same level as his classmates. Now, after you've gone through this process, that can take a couple weeks, and your kid has to be there in person in order to, do the test. Or at least most of the schools said that they did not give the test until your kid was there and could take it themselves. After that process happens, they go through it all, and then they will send you an acceptance letter, or they'll say, sorry, I don't think we're a good fit. Then when they say, yes, come on down, we're a great fit, then you have to pay the registration fee. Now, this is called matricula down here. And so and the matriculas can vary greatly from thousands of dollars to a couple $100s. And there are some schools that don't even do a matricula. And there's other schools, and the matricula is a little bit more particular, because with some of the international schools, it can be pretty hefty. It's a couple $1,000s. But some of them have this deal that, like, if you start in kindergarten and you pay this big matricula and your kid goes all the way through and then they graduate, you can get the matricula back once they graduate. But if you withdraw your kid anywhere along that space, then, it's gone. And if you're coming in at someplace other than the beginning, you're not getting your matricula back. But that is a big factor when it comes to the cost of the school, is how much the matricula is, and and where you're coming in a school year. Because if you're coming in like middle of the school year, you're like, oh, great, I have to pay this, extra couple $1,000 bill on top of the tuition. So after you pay your matricula, then you go out and you get your uniforms and the other little things that you need for school. And then you will pay your monthly tuition. Pay tuition and then start school. Now, the tuition usually it's like a 10-month tuition that costs, depending upon the school, it can be For most of the international schools, I'd say they're between 300 to 500. Well, I shouldn't say 300. Maybe let's say $400 to $1,000 a month. And for the bicultural schools, they're a lot less. They're closer to like $200 to $500 a month for putting your kids in those schools. And that's kind of the application process, and it takes a while. So this is something that we, when we have a new concierge client that comes in, I mean, we sit down from the get-go, and I've actually created kind of, it's like a little, going way back to my programming days, I created this little program that prioritizes when it comes to location, when it comes to your priorities, when it comes to your children's education, and when it comes to your priorities of living in El Salvador. We put those priorities down, and then I made this little program that kind of calculates which school would fit your child best, because all the schools, even the internationals, have very different focuses. I guess I'll just say focus. So according to that, we'll determine more or less where you're going to live. Because when you're moving to a new country, there are so many decisions, so many decisions to make. And so I use this logarithm that I've created to kind of narrow those decisions down a whole lot to figure out where your best fit is really going to be. And I'll talk more about that when we hit the internationals. Outside of El Salvador, outside of San Salvador, and I mean like the middle central strip of San Sal down to La Libertad. Outside of there, in Santa Ana, there are two schools that are bilingual schools. One is an Escuela Interamericana, and that one goes all the way through high school and is known as being a really good private school. The other one is Santa Ana Bilingual Academy. That one does not have high school. That one's just it just has the primaria and the secundaria. Down over in San Miguel, they have Colegio Académica Bilingual. What's that called? Europea. Sorry. But that does have the August to June schedule, and it is bilingual also. And those are the only options outside of the San Sal area. Now, in the San Sal area, here we go. When it comes to the international schools. Now, when I say international, international typically means that it is accredited and certified and fully bi or trilingual. Or it's like the Escuela Americana, like, hello, everything's pretty much in English. I don't know if they teach any of their other classes other than Spanish class in Spanish. It is an English school, period. Whereas a lot of the bicultural schools, they'll have like the electives are in Spanish, but like the core classes are in English. It's a little bit more of a mix. But these schools are a little bit different. And these are kind of in order of biggest to down to smallest. I think Liceo Francés and I think Escuela Americana are probably the biggest. I think Escuela Americana has around 1,700 students in it. I did a video with them. Look down in the playlist and you'll see I sponsored a video with them. That is, Escuela Americana is kind of seen as like the top of the top. It's the most expensive, but it's also the most, it's amazing, all the support and the resources that they have there. It's an amazing school. So you'll have to check out the video down below. It goes through, like it has one of the smallest, student to adult ratios as far as support. But okay, so here we go. All these other, there's Liceo Francés, and then there's Académica Británica, Cuscatleta. Then so this is the French school. This is the British school. This is the American school. This is the German school. Okay. And this is called the international school. They go by CISS. And then these ones down here are more, they're more on the bicultural side. So when I'm saying international, I'm talking these guys because Liceo Francés, that means the classes are in French. So if your kid doesn't speak French, it might not be a good idea to throw them into Liceo Francés in, ninth, 12th grade. They may not be happy with that. And again, the German school is, it has classes in German, it has classes in Spanish, and it has English classes. So you'll get the gamut. And the Académica Británica, they have classes, of course, in English. And of course, they'll have a class in Spanish. And I already talked about Escuela Americana. So with these guys, Colegio Internacional is, and that's English. Now, when it comes to those guys, things that sets them apart is they usually have a covenant or they have a certification from that home country. And so that's why, and because there's different perks to those certifications, that's why parents will choose, especially Salvadoran parents, will choose different things. For example, like if you graduate from Liceo Francés, they are accredited with the schooling system in France. So your kids can go to school in French. That's a big one for the Escuela Alemania. In Germany, higher education it's free. The state provides it. So I know some Salvadoran parents that send their kids to Escuela Alemana because, hello, they don't want to pay for university. So they're like, you're going to learn German and some English. And so you can go to Germany for your university. The other thing is because these are accredited with the countries that they're from. For example, Académica Británica, the British school is aligned with British schools up in the UK. That means they have an IB program, or it's called an International Baccalaureate program. And that program, it's kind of like this holistic. It's supposed to be teaching the evolution of the whole child kind of thing. And so it's very different in that, well, for example, my daughter is currently in an IB school, in an IB program. And so she has, instead of just having 2 years of a foreign language, that is typical in like a US high school. If you're going to go to college, you have to have 2 years of foreign language. Well, she has 4 years of foreign language because she's an IB program. And she also has different accelerated classes and they'd call them in the US, we call them AP classes, right? Advanced placement classes. And if your kid gets above a 3 to a 5 on those AP classes, then they can get college credit for that class. And again, in the IB program is supposed to be a little bit like an accelerated learning program. So they'll have something similar to like an advanced, not quite an associate's degree by the time they graduate from high school. For example, my daughter, she also has 4 years of art because again, it's about the whole person, not just the academics, which is AP is typically it's academics. It's we drill in, we go in deep, you master this subject, you take the test, you see if you get the credits. But sometimes AP doesn't pay off that well. For example, my son, he took, I think it was about 6 AP classes, and he got like 1 3 and like 5 5s. And so he thought he was going to get, hey, woohoo, I'm going to get all these credit hours when I got to school. That didn't exactly happen. So even though he got a 5 in his AP physics, he only got 3 credits. It only got him 3 credit hours for AP Phys. or for Phys 101. It didn't count for Phys 102. But in AP Chem, if you get a 5 in AP Chem, it counts for Chem 101 and Chem 102. So we get 6 credit hours, and you get to skip all of that. Again, similarly, like his calc, he it only clept, I think it clept 2 classes of his calc because he got a 5. If he'd only gotten a 3, he would only gotten like 1 calc 101 that was clept. So there are pros and cons to doing an IB system versus doing an AP system versus doing like a dual enrollment. But either way, but we consider all of that stuff when we sit down and kind of get real about what your kids' talents and gifts are and where they are going to be going post high school. Okay, so that explains a little bit about these international ones, about these international schools. Now, down here, we have, here we go, more international schools, more really bicultural schools. And some of these do have international certifications. So, for example, this one, the Colegio Salvadoreño Inglés, they have a certification through Oxford University. So they kind of, part of their thing is we're a bilingual school. We have this Oxford University certification. So again, it's this thing of, your kid can go to the UK for college because we have this Oxford certification. And there is a wide range. There's a lot, I'd say, of the bicultural schools. There's a lot of religious schools, Catholic and evangelical. Let me steer this over. For example, I think Highlands is a Christian. I think that's a Christian school. But this one, Colegio Lamatepec and Floresta. Okay, this school is a super traditional Catholic school. I mean, think way back. It's known for having really top academics and being a very good school, but it's super traditional. They have 2 separate schools, one for boys, one for girls. It's not even co-ed. And they have mass like daily. And they have choir, they have a lot of extra things that are seen in a very traditional Catholic school. But they also have a ton of traffic because I used to live next to them. And I gotta say, and that's one little tangent I'm going to take right now, is that when it comes, the reason why when I sit down with my clients and I do this, okay, what are your priorities when it comes to moving down to El Salvador, is because the traffic in San Sal is no joke. You can sit there in the morning for 30 minutes to go 1 kilometer. So even getting your kid to school and picking your kid up from school, it can seriously have a massive control factor on your life. So that's why when I sit down with you, we go through, okay, number 1, what is your priority for language? For what the languages they need to know. 2, what is the priority of the schedule of, do you want them starting in August? Do you need summers off? Or would you honestly rather have, Christmas holidays off? What location? How important is the location that you're going to be going there every Monday and Friday? You're going to be picking up every Monday through Friday. So you may not want to be sitting in traffic. You may not want to live far away from that school. 2 is the pedagogy. What type of education do you want your kid to have, and how important is that? And then lastly of all, of course, is the cost. And after we rank those in priority, my little logarithm works out, and then we find out pretty much the neighborhood, or where the neighborhood and also the school that fits you best. Because, I mean, for example, if the location isn't that important, I have like my friend Mike, great guy. He lives in Zonte. His children get up at 4:30 in the morning and go into school every day. And granted, he pays a driver to take his kids in at 4:30 in the morning, and then they have to fly, and then they have to drive, and then the driver brings them all the way back in the evenings. But they have to do that every day in the morning because of the traffic and because of living so far away. So so for him, location really doesn't matter because he hired a driver, right? And he really wanted his beach house. His beach house was more important than necessarily being close to the school. So that worked out for him. I know a lot of parents that don't want don't want their kids, being gone for like 9, 10 hours a day. So then we have to look more about neighborhoods that are closer to where your kid's going to go to school. There's other factors when it comes to your school choice, like going down here. For example, let's see, like Panamericana has a gorgeous campus, like right on the side of Bocoron. And the director there, Mrs. Pardo, she is just one of the most sweetest, she's just an awesome, awesome director. That's a director is the principal. That's what they call the principal down here. They call it the director. Awesome principal. She tried to offer me a job to teach high school chemistry. And I'm like, thanks, but that's not why I'm in El Salvador. But that is a great school that's right on Bocoron. It has a beautiful campus. I mean, Highlands is it's like right smack dab in the middle of the big metropolitan area. This, as I said, the Colegio Salvadoreño Inglés has that certification with Britain. This Lamatepec and Floresta, I already told you that, you guys, that is a super Catholic divided school. That's why there's two names, because Floresta is for the girls and Lamatepec is for the boys. The Colegio Maya, this one is actually done in Zaragoza. That's the one that's closest to the beach. And it is very much an open, like their focus is super open. They have classes that are on the hill. They have outdoor classes. Like you're not sitting in the classroom all the time. And they have an amphitheater out there, and they have these big, massive gardens where the kids go in and they plant. And they very much have this family vibe. And they give the kids a lot of power in like their student government. And I know a bunch of kids that, in fact, some of our old clients that we helped move down that have their kids in there, and their kids love it because they love the family environment and the lack of kind of competition that they used to feel in the States, but they don't feel it down here. But Colegio Maya is filling up. I know some of their grades are already full, and you can't get in. So again, you gotta kind of hedge your bets on what are your priorities and also where you can get into. Let's see, Maquiliswat, that is one of the few schools that actually has an IB program in the primaria. So IB it's typically the high school. IB is the one that's very accredited and gets a whole lot of attention because the universities really like the IB program, but they technically do have a middle school and a primary program. And Maquiliswat, I think, is the only school. And this one has a really good location if you live in San Benito. It's in San Benito. So, yeah. Let's see. Move on down. Sorry, this is so long, but I'm telling you, this is a lot to do. The Colegio Bilingual Cuscatlan. So this one is out in Nuevo Cuscatlan, and it's one of the newer schools, and its big focus is on technology. And so they have a swimming pool on campus and swimming classes, and they have theater, but they have these big computer labs and tech school, because that's kind of more of their focus and the vibe of that school. And there are so many more schools. Just the other day when I was walking from Arbol de Vida, I was just walking down the street and boom, there was another school on the side called the Tesla. It was like the the Tesla, tech school. And there are so many various educational options in El Salvador. And it really depends upon those 5 factors of money, location, where it's at, what you want your kid to kind of focus and their emphasis, what languages you want them to do. Because I mean, hey, you can do like the immigrants that go to the US. You can just, throw them in a public school, like a lot of the immigrant kids have to do, and they kind of sink or swim. Um, you can do that too if you can't afford to do a private school. You know, that's an option too. But it all comes down to, and again, when do you want your vacations? Do you need the summer off so you can, maybe fly back to your home country and spend time with grandma and grandpa? Or, I mean, those are kind of the main factors. And I hope, I hope through this 45 minutes, I've made it a little bit clearer about the educational options and the variety that there is in El Salvador, and why, and also a little bit of why you might need some help. Just saying. If you are interested in coming down here, because living here is very different from visiting here. That's why I created these relocation tours. And I have a specific family relocation tour it's really short. It's only 3-4 days. So you can kind of cover it in half of a week. Where you come down, we'll visit some of the schools. You go in and you fill out a form about what you are most interested in, so we can really hone into what your family's life in El Salvador could look like if you're living down here. And I created these so that you would know for sure, from the 90% surety, kind of, yes, El Salvador is for me. I have a plan. I know what I'm going to do. Or nope, we thought maybe, but no, maybe we want to try something different. Because not knowing and just sitting on YouTube and watching tons and tons of videos and just wondering, yeah, that won't it just wastes your time. So I think that's it. I will check really quick to see if there are any other comments. I don't know why, but the chat's not working. I'm sorry if you put something in the chat and I didn't see it, but nothing came up in my chat. So either nobody's watching this or or my chat's just not working. Either way, I am Jenny Adi, shining my light so you can shine yours. If you want to come on one of our relocation tours, go to livinlikealocal.com. If you want to, if you need us to help you do any legal stuff, immigration paperwork, again, you can get on the website or just book a call to see what your options are. That's all on the website. That's it. Have a wonderful night, and I will see you in El Salvador. Bye-bye.